Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm good.
So we have Juliana. Well, you can see that. Evan and Andrew.
Well, I'm glad to meet you all.
So I originally met Dick at City Harvest, where he was running HR, consulting with HR, at least twice, and set up some very helpful systems at City Harvest. And we've sort of been in touch ever since, one way or another. So, Dick, do you want to talk about more of your bio?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I hope you all had a good weekend, and I did. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. The accent you hear is Dutch. I'm born and raised in Amsterdam, Holland, but I've been in the United States for more than 40 years. I came to Boston to get a graduate degree after I had been working in Amsterdam in a chain of restaurants and bars, where I started as a bartender. Then I became a manager of a bar and a restaurant, and I ended up, while going to school, as a COO of a company which had had a nightclub and 8 different restaurants. And so at some point I decided, well, I've learned everything I can learn here. I just also got my master's degree at that time, and I decided, I want some more adventure. And so I applied for graduate school at Boston College in Boston, where I also got a PhD. In essence, I'm a sociologist, so in my work, I focus on groups of people or communities of people rather than individuals. And I wanted to teach at a college level, but I didn't get the job I wanted. And so I ended up being hired by Polaroid Corporation. Some of you might still remember, it's instant photography based on chemicals. It got completely put out of business by cell phone pictures, basically. But they hired me to reorganize the factory, and they didn't know where to put me. So they put me in HR. I had never any ambition to go in HR. And I worked for them for 18 years, and and at the end I was the head of HR of an organization. When I joined them, there were 12,000 people. When I left, there were 1,500 people all over the world, and I had many jobs with them, and we'll touch base on that perhaps later as well. But the company, in essence, couldn't afford my salary anymore, so I was severed. I knew that already that it would happen 2 years before I left. And I was asked by my girlfriend at the time if I would want to join her company because it's a food consulting company, and they had trouble implementing because they encountered all kinds of people issues. I said, well, I'm not quite sure if I want to work for you. I'm not so sure if that's good for our relationship. So we set up a company within a company, which is called, the company is called Karen Karp and Partners. And initially I became responsible for a part of the company that's called Good People Are Good Business. And City Harvest was one of my first clients. As Susan mentioned, I was the head of HR there for 2 periods of time. One was like 4 or 5 years as a consultant, but in essence, people didn't know I was a consultant anymore. And then again, when a The head of HR, that's like half a year before the pandemic started, left, and so they asked me to step back in and recruit a successor. So I worked with City Harvest through the beginning, through the first 9 months of the pandemic until a successor was found. I do a lot of work on compensation and pay. My clients are generally not-for-profits in the greater New York area. My largest clients right now are in healthcare, where again, I'm the head of HR of two organizations. Both of them are based in Westchester. One is called Open Door. They are a community health center, so they provide healthcare to documented, undocumented people. People are insured and uninsured, to help them prevent using the emergency room as their, as their primary care physician. And the other organization is called Family Services of Westchester. They are a social services organization, and both organizations are have about 550 staff members. So it's 1,100. It's a large social service organization. I've been doing this work for a long time. Even when I became the manager of a bar and restaurant, I realized that compensation and retaining people and preventing people from stealing, which is very prevalent in the restaurant business and bar business. I learned a lot about HR then, and have continued to apply it. So that's my introduction. Can I ask you a few questions before we start? In the first place, I have to say, the questions I received from you, through Susan are really good and not so easy to answer. That makes for good questions. I'm going to try in a little bit to begin to answer them. But what would be success for you for this time we spent together, aside from answering the questions and talking about that?
Well, for me, who is not the most important person in this particular group, that people get something that they didn't expect.
Okay.
So Juliana, Evan, Andrew, Angelina, Christopher, what do you think?
What is success for this time together for you?
I would say to just learn more about your role at the different companies and hopefully like gain more knowledge on the HR industry.
Yeah. And I will talk about that. I mean, you in essence, am I correct that you decided to take this course because you have an interest in HR as a potential career?
Yes.
Is that, yeah. So I will talk a little bit about that probably in the middle. What makes for a good HR person, and what kind of people should think twice before going into HR. Who else? What else? Camille, or Christopher, what is success for this meeting, this class, for you?
For me personally, I would just like to learn from you and your experience and just hear what you have to say about HR and also about the payment plans that you also created.
Yeah, great. How about you, Christopher, Chris?
Professor, this is Andrew. I just spoke to Chris. He said he's having troubles with his microphone.
I see.
So he's trying to get that fixed for us right now.
So what do you expect from it?
So this is a required course for me. So HR was never a field that I really looked into, but it's something that after taking this for a little while that I would definitely consider. So I think getting a little more insight from more people like yourself who've worked in the industry would be great to take away from this.
All right. Good. Good. You know, upon reflection, let me start there, right? You know, we all, you are in an early part of your career, but we all going to work for a while. And if you think in terms of career, most people will at some point supervise others. That's a more common, you know, career path. You start as a team member, then you do that well, or you go somewhere else, and you get some kind of promotion, and you will supervise others. Every person who supervises people in any company, to do that well, you need to have HR in your blood. Because if you cannot manage resources, you cannot supervise people, in essence. So HR is important, you know, HR management, um, and getting teams to perform, or individuals to perform, or getting people who are not performing that well to perform better, or hiring the right people, is not an HR capability only. HR cannot, if you are a supervisor of a team, HR can advise you, but they cannot make that team successful. It will be you as a supervisor, right? So if people think, oh, well, HR is for HR, but I think HR is for anyone who moves up in their career, or anyone who starts a family. If you start a family, you know, you need to manage a partner, so to speak. You need to manage potentially kids. That is not that different from managing a project team or a team. And so some of the characteristics or some of the capabilities that are important in HR are also important in regular life circumstances. And the better CEOs, you know, sometimes CEO says, what I consider of some of the top companies, they say, my most important person to make this company run is the person who is my right hand, and that's the VP of people or the executive vice president of HR. Because without people functioning well, this machine cannot run, right? And even if you think about, you know, professional sports teams, they're getting more and more selective in how to recruit people. In the past, it was all, you know, technical skills. That means how good a basketball player are you, or a hockey player, or a football player, or a baseball player. Now, because the demands are, you know, you have demands in social media, demands with the press, you have demands with teammates. They, you know, they require different things from a manager that are very much HR related. All these people, you know, they are stars in their own right, and so they have egos to go along with it. And yet there's some superstars and there's some up-and-comer players. You need to manage that all, and the better managers do that. So it's not just about the technical skills. It's very much about the social skills and the HR capabilities that people have. You know, and the best superstars in sport, they're also the best often in how good they are in teaching and developing players who will never be as good as they are, but they are important on a team. So when you think about HR, and I think it was Andrew who mentioned it, that he had different reasons to be interested in HR. This is how you need to think about it. And then you have the HR people who need to think about it additionally to that. My best jobs, whether it's as a consultant or in my career, were with business people. That's still the case now. Business people, so business partners who I supported and their organizations who valued the, what I have to offer from an HR point of view. They perform better, they understand what needs to be done, and they bring you in as a partner. The worst people I worked for who saw HR only as administrators, as people who write contracts or make sure the contracts are right, and basically see people as cogs, not as important people to make it work. So some people come to me and say, well, I'm interested in HR because I'm a people person. Well, the interesting part and the important part of HR is that you have to balance the needs of the employees, the staff, and the needs of the company or the organization. You need to be able to balance both. The company pays you, and key skills to do well in HR, you need to be able to maneuver that conflict at times. Interest of employees is not always the same as interest of the company. You need to balance it, and you need to be able to influence both sides. Even as an entry-level HR coordinator, you're going to get pressures from the business and pressures from the employees, and you need to be able to communicate or explain a middle ground, and you need to be able to push back at management sometimes. You'll learn that over time. That's not how you start on day one, right? But if you are not detail-oriented, HR is not the right place for you, because an element of HR is to be precise. You have to be precise in offer letters. You have to be precise when somebody files a complaint. You have to go about it the right way. The higher up you go, the less you do that administration. You have other people that do that for you. I recently hired a person in an organization that was very capable, but she really always wanted to work behind a closed door. It's not good. You need to be accessible. People come to you with all kinds of questions. They come to you in pain because something happened in their life. You need to be welcoming and answer them. So to be, to like to work with people, which I think is different than being a people person, because you also at times have to say no to people as well, right? Because it's certain policies require you to do certain things and not allow others. But you need to be open, and you need to have both good interpersonal skills to influence people on both sides of the in essence of the spectrum, from management or ownership or store manager to employees. And you need to also have good written communication skills, because documentation is important in HR, because otherwise people will just not remember and create their own reality, which you can't have, particularly not in pay. I had several jobs where I was globally responsible. I've been responsible for a global part of an organization where there were 4,000 salespeople across the globe. and um, and another 4,000 people in manufacturing in China, Mexico, Scotland, Holland, and the United States. So you have to be comfortable as an HR person with diversity in education, diversity in culture, diversity in nationality, uh, diversity in religion, in sexual orientation, um, color of skin, origin, career tracks. I mean, you have to be able to embrace that. In the first large company I worked for, which was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it was run by New England engineers. They had not traveled very much. I was seen as a bit strange because I came from Europe. And they certainly didn't work much with people of color or women. And we worked hard to change that until new leadership came and they embraced that more. But HR is like it's a quilt of different colors that you work with. And you need to enjoy that. That also means with some decisions, there's a right way, but in many issues, in HR, there are multiple ways to go about it. And you need to figure it out. And at some point, you need to take a stand. So it's a very, I'm a sociologist. I never thought I would go in HR because I associated too much with paper pushing, basically. And I came in at a little higher level. I always had people working for me who did some of that administration work, or they knew the law much better than I do, and some people still do. And so I can work on the puzzle. And compensation is a puzzle, right? Where you want to be fair, but you also want to be affordable to the company, right? And so several of you asked questions about, how can you be fair? Well, fairness is in the eye of the beholder. If I represent an owner or an executive director, they have a certain definition of fair, and the entry-level person has a very different definition of what's fair. And you have to maneuver it. And they all can basically vote with their feet. The entry-level person can leave and find a different job that either pays the same or pays more, particularly now. And the owner can say, well, they might be unhappy, but this is just going to be the way it is. And so, because I need to make a profit or something like that, and so fairness is just like fairness in the regular world. If you only think in the political world, that people have very different opinions about fair. Certain legal procedures are taking place in New York tomorrow. People have very different perspectives on that, as you know. Some people say, yep, it's about time. And other people say it's completely unjust. And they come from an angle that is defendable, both of them. You don't have to agree with it, but it's defendable. And so you need to hear those different perspectives. All right. This was one question that was not asked about partially why is it fun to be in HR? Why is everyone an HR person? Unless you want to become a hermit. I think few of us want to do that. And what does it take to do HR well? Very important are active listening skills. Active listening is the capability of committing yourself to truly seeking to understand what a person is saying. And the saying comes from the mouth, and it comes from the face and from the body. And it comes from people's history. So if you're not good in active listening, in truly finding out what a person is trying to say, you're going to be less effective. I mean, you're going to be less effective in life, I think, right? In partnerships, in our relationships with the friendships that we have with people, or the life partnerships we have with people or hope to have with people. Listening to other people's point of view and seeking to understand this is important. It's very important to make it work over time, right? So, again, another example how HR capabilities are everywhere, really. Susan, you want to briefly share that graph? Because I want to talk, I'm going to pivot now, if it's okay to you, to some
Sure.
of your
Let me just,
questions. Some of your questions, who are really outstanding.
uh,
And I encourage you, when I start to when I
there we go.
start to answer those questions, if you know, particularly at the end, but also during the question, just ask follow-up questions. Um,
So can you see that window or no?
and here we are. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So KKMP is the company that I'm the manager director of. So I'm in essence the COO of the company, but I also run this part of the company focused on people. So what this is, and it's fine to share with everybody later on, Susan. This is in essence a graphic of how to develop, what are the elements of an HR strategy. And you see here compensation and benefits at the top. Then you have performance management, how to maybe set goals and how to do year-end reviews. Then there is a structure of the company, how you're organized. Then if you're a bit larger, it's important to have a succession plan. There's development of people, people need to be trained. There are policies and procedures, there's staffing, right? Recruiting in essence. There's a certain culture and leadership behavior and how you communicate with the staff. And so let's say if you are a small company and you want to grow, that's the current condition. Small company, we want to triple in size over 3 years. That's the future state. And these arrows are all part of HR strategy. You don't have to pull them all. You don't have to focus on all of them at the same time. But compensation and benefits going to be central if you are in a growth mode, if you are in steady state mode, or when you are in decline. The corporation I worked for 18 years was 17 years in decline. And so compensation became very complicated and interesting. And we designed compensation in such a way that was focused on retaining people while we were downsizing, because we could not hire people off the street, because many, even machine operators, they worked on custom-made machinery and they were in-house trained, and you couldn't just recruit them from a technical college or a vocational school. So what you see here, what you want to do going forward influences all these different arrows, and it influences compensation and benefits. So I just want to show you that for organizations to move from A to B, there are multiple levers they can and should focus on. And the priority gets determined where they're at in the current state, right? If they're a startup, they have very little. They will not have an employee handbook. And they have little money to pay people. So they pay people with all kinds of mechanisms of compensation that will pay people later rather than now, because they don't have the money often. All right. So now we go to the questions. So you see, just by this way, this is a complex, when you think about HR strategy, it's a complex issue you need to deal with. Now, doesn't mean every HR person needs to deal with, but if I work in compensation, I need to know where the company is going to be able to plan compensation well. Succession planning is likely something that a higher level HR person is involved in. But policies and procedures touch every employee and every HR person. And and it sets the stage what kind of company it is that you are an HR person in, or what kind of company you are working for. Okay. Juliana, are you here? I can't see everybody. I should make everybody.
My camera isn't working, but my microphone is.
Okay, great. Very good questions. Your first question is, how does a company decide what is fair pay for an employee in any position? Is there a set of rubrics they must follow for certain positions? Pay gets in the first place determined by the sector, the business sector a company or an organization is in. Okay? If it's a retail company, the pay gets determined what other retail people make in the region. So if we are New York, we don't compare pay. We don't compare retail salary, for example, to Minnesota or North Dakota or Alabama. The cost of living is a lot lower, and so the salaries and benefits will be higher in New York. We would compare ourselves to New Jersey, for example, New Jersey and New York. So the first element of how to determine fair pay, and I think fair is complicated. The word fair in pay is complicated. There are very few people who will say, oh, my pay is really fair. Nobody says, oh, I got paid too much, right? And yet you need to strive for fairness, because again, fair in the eyes of owners or stockholders of a company is different from fair from the employee's point of view. HR sits in the middle. And so how does compensation gets determined? In any positions. A, location. It's not location, as I mentioned, for example, New York, will drive up the cost. B, sector. If you work in financial services, you're going to get paid more. The level of education required might be higher, right? C, experience, right? So later on, someone asked, people do the same job and they get paid differently. Same job, same responsibilities. How could that happen? It could happen if one person has much longer seniority. They have done this job much longer. They have showed up every day of the year that they were working, snow, sleet, heat. They showed up on time to open the store. That person should get paid more than a person who just got promoted into that job. That doesn't always happen, right? So what I'm saying here is same jobs does not necessarily lead to same pay. Same job with same experience should lead to the same pay. Same experience and performance, right? People still could get different pay because one person, the same title, same years of experience, but the other person just does the job better in the eyes of the supervisor. And they get better pay increases and better bonuses. So you, in essence, compare your pay to the local competition. How do you find that out? People who leave an organization are important. You can learn from them. You want to learn why they leave. And so, unless you're a very small company, exit interviews with people who leave voluntarily is really important because you learn why they leave and you learn often where they're going to and why they're going there. And so in that process, you learn, hey, they leave us because they get 50 cents more per hour somewhere else. Or they leave us because the benefits are better. Or they leave us because hybrid work is more allowed than being in person all the time. So, and these exit interviews are completed in the last few days. I need to drink something. Of somebody's employment. You don't do an exit interview with somebody who's terminated, right? You know why they're leaving because you wanted them to leave. You find out information about the competition. And a measurement, so this is a different way of answering the question. A measurement of fairness, if you're paying fairly, is a low turnover rate. Then people are apparently relatively happy. And you are competitive. Because, there's surveys done every year. Tens of thousands of people are asked questions about why they leave jobs. Number one reason, what do you think? Not Susan, anybody else. Why do people leave jobs? You know, why would you leave a job? They're unhappy. Yeah, unhappy about what, Christopher? They're unhappy, definitely. With pay is the number one reason. It means they leave because they get more pay. What is the number two reason? Still unhappy. They can get better benefits. Number three, they can get better pay and benefits. It's all the time the same. Now, I want to ask you the question, and you should just think about your own experience in the jobs you've held. What are number 4, 5, 6, and 7 all are related to one part of the job why people leave? They're unhappy about something. What is it?
Evan, I think you should try to answer that.
Maybe their coworkers pay or maybe location. Like nowadays, I feel like people want to work remote.
Yeah, the remote part is the not being allowed to work remote or at least hybrid has come up significantly in the last 2 years, right? When or the last year and a half or so, when the pandemic is still with us, but it's a little different now than it was in the beginning. Co-workers are people don't really leave because of co-workers. It might be a co-worker they have difficulty with and they feel that person is not addressed. But at work, who is the person you cannot divorce from unless you leave?
Your boss.
Yep. So 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all related to the supervisor or boss. I don't respect him or her. I can't learn anything from him and her. He or she has favorites. And so, I do a lot of recruiting and advising people on how to recruit. when people change jobs, they tend to focus on money and benefits. And they think about the organization they go to, perhaps their mission or their success. And there they go. They apply for a job, they interview well, and they get hired. What people don't do in general is do research, or as I would call it, due diligence on the supervisor. And that is key in happiness. The money is going to be the money. The benefits going to be the benefits. You know, they might change over time, both of them, of course. But the supervisor going to be there from day one. And people underestimate or forget to do due diligence. They do due diligence in a company. They talk to people about what is it to work there, but they rarely ask, or they don't ask enough about the supervisor, which is really key, right? And that's all, you know, it's here in culture and leadership behavior. It's like in the arrow there at the bottom. But the money is what attracts people, and then they forget about it. So most companies benefit from retaining people, unless they're downsizing. Then they need to let people go to survive, right? But companies benefit from retaining people. What is good about retaining people?
Adelina, what do you think?
Thank you for calling on people, Susan.
Maybe she stepped away.
Right.
Anybody else?
And
Andrew?
the pay strategy needs to deliver that, the retention. But why is retention good? What happens if you have to hire people the whole time?
Andrew, you know that. Okay, Christopher.
Oh, I see here. Sorry, go ahead. I missed it now. I will say on the chat.
Chat.
Where's the chat? Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here it is.
Can you read that?
There. Yeah.
Building relationships, keeping benefits to few people, and having people who already know the business system.
They know how to do the job. And so if
Yeah.
people leave the whole time, you have to train them all over again. They might know nothing of nothing. But even if it's a not that complex job, let's say in retail, you still have to train people. You have to train people of how the store should look, how, let's say, how to treat the customers, where the flexibility is, and so retention is very costly. Turnover is very costly. Some people say that turnover costs between 20 or 30% of someone's annual salary or wage. Because then you have to incorporate people anew into a team. And so you want to keep people, not the people who don't perform very well. But most people in most organizations perform fine. So, all right. So, and so what I talked about how to set fair pay is not that different for each position. You need to look at benchmarking at comparable positions in similar industries or sectors at a similar level, whether it's a CEO or an entry-level person, right? And so people often come to us and say, well, I need to get paid more because so-and-so I've seen a job opening, a posting, where the job got offered for more money. Well, it happens to be in a different state. It happens to be a for-profit organization versus a not-for-profit organization. It happens to be in a different sector where the profit margins, if the profit margins are larger, right, like for companies like Google or Apple or Microsoft, if the margins are larger, people will pay more. Okay, and like healthcare, I mean, there's a shortage in healthcare at this point at all levels. It pays more. And because of the pandemic and because of daycare issues and fear of life, really, many people left healthcare. And some of the schools who were feeders to positions have shut down for a while. So it created a shortage in labor, in essence, and then the pay goes up. Okay. All right, I got to another question. How do you motivate people in a pay plan? This is Andrew's question. And how do you design a pay plan that motivates people to perform and achieve organizational goals? Well, there are multiple elements of a pay plan, right? It's the compensation, either hourly or the salaried compensation. And then you have bonuses or commissions. Commissions is really more prevalent in sales jobs, as you know, and some jobs even have only commissions and either very low guaranteed wages and higher commissions. So you have to pay people fairly. That's where it starts. How do you motivate people? Fairly, so that fairly, in my mind, means here comparable to the comparable marketplace. Okay, as we talked about. The proof that you do it well comes from good retention rates. Okay? So you need to be solid in pay. Now, I hold, by the way, I'm going to talk about bonuses in a minute. Compensation and benefits together are referred to as total compensation because they reflect money, right? The value of how much a company contributes to healthcare insurance, the number of vacation days, the sick leave policy, whether you work hybrid or need to be in the office all the time. It represents money. And it's important to take it, or a retirement savings plan. The match of companies represents money. So you need to, as an employee, but also as a pay strategist, you need to look at them combined. Because both of them need to be competitive with the marketplace for the sector you're in. So if you are a not-for-profit in New York City, you compare yourself to not-for-profits in New York or New Jersey at a similar size, right? Similar number of employees. All right, let's talk about bonus for a moment. I think bonuses are really important to motivate people. And I've implemented and I'm in favor of bonuses for for-profit organizations and not-for-profit organizations. They never used to exist in not-for-profit. But I don't see for-profits and not-for-profit that different. They both have a mission. They both want to do a good job in their mission or their focus. For-profit organizations want to end up with a profit and perhaps the stock price to go up. And not-for-profit organizations, they want to build up their reserve for bad times. And the reserve is their equivalent for the not-for-profits as for-profit, as profit is for the for-profit organizations. I'm stumbling a bit about my own words here. So there are lots of good, bad, and ugly for-profit organizations, and there are lots of good, bad, and ugly not-for-profit organizations. The better ones of both of them have a lot of similarities. They have strong leadership that has a plan. Strategy is just a fancy word for a plan, okay, that people have thought about. They respect employees and they want to retain them, and they want to pay them fairly, meaning fairly means in line with the marketplace. And then they have a good management team, and then you have employees who perform and are engaged and feel fairly treated. That doesn't mean every single person feels that, but by and large, people feel that. People still will move on because they have different opportunities, or their partner goes to a different state, et cetera, et cetera. So when you design bonus plans as part of compensation strategy, you need to base them as much as you can on areas that the people that will get the bonus can influence. Okay, so I work in healthcare. I'll give you an example. Work in healthcare. In essence, clinics. There are town-based clinics that provide, as I said earlier on, healthcare for documented and undocumented people, insured and uninsured. So the doctors that we hire are family physicians, women's health people, dentists, social workers. The doctors, the family physicians, can make a lot more money in the hospitals in New York. They're a bit more of a cog there, but there's more money there from donations, from gifts, and from all the specialties that these hospitals have to offer, that where a lot of money is charged for, as we know. So we cannot compete with salary. So we instituted a compensation system that reserved a large chunk of money for bonuses. And I'll give you an example. So if you're a family physician and you come out of residency, so it's the last part of their education after, I think it's 7 years of education, the starting salary would be $185,000 a year. If they would go to a hospital in New York, it would be $230,000. Big difference. Okay. So we instituted a bonus plan that focused on really three elements, I should say. And it was worth about from 10 to 15% of their pay. So it's a lot of money, okay? But they need to earn it. The most important part of that bonus plan is measured by the number of visits, the number of patients, patient visit they see a year. They have a target of that. The budget of the company or the organization is based on it. And if they hit that number, they get 50% of the bonus. Then 25%, let's say there are 6 different sites, clinics. 25% is based if the clinic hit that number, the visits. And the visits are important because that's then how you bill out, right? You need the visits to then bill the insurance companies. Without the visits, no income. The insurance companies or The federal and states governments subsidize these clinics based on visits. And then the last 25% is a quality of care, right? Measured by, in essence, what's called the chief medical officer, the head of clinical services. People can look at where they are on the site visit and the individual visits. They know the target in the beginning of the year, and they can see it where they're at for the site and for themselves every single second of the day. So it's in their control, right? That 50% of, and the quality is in their control. The site is less in their control. But I wanted, in the design, I wanted them to think not just about themselves, but also helping out the site, in essence. So when you design compensation or bonus systems, you need to make it visible as much as you can on a regular basis. Doesn't need to be every second of the day, but people need to be updated on where they're at, and it needs to be in their control, or as much in their control as possible. It's not so easy always, right? You can't do it always, but that is the holy grail. And it's a carrot. Bonus is a carrot, and it creates focus. And the goal is to pay it out. The goal is to pay it out. The goal is not to save money with it. Because if you achieve these goals, the organization does well, the organization should be happy to pay it out. All right. Andrew, did I answer this question from you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. How did COVID-19 affect your company's pay plan? It's a good question from Adelina. As I mentioned earlier, I was the head of HR for City Harvest, right? Which is an anti-hunger organization or a food rescue organization in New York City. And they distribute food primarily to agencies that are either churches or anti-hunger agencies all over the 5 boroughs, who then distribute it to people. They also distribute it directly as well, but that's a smaller part of the organization. When the pandemic hit there in March of 2020, I was the head of HR there. And, medically, as you can remember, we know really nothing of nothing. We had no masks, right? We need to keep distance. We need to sneeze in our elbow, that kind of stuff. And that was it, right? No vaccine, no nothing. And people really didn't know how to deal with it. And we heard the sirens in the city, every hour of the day of ambulances. This is a very scary time. There were all kinds of rules emerging of healthcare workers, right? From the state's organization about what they need to do. If you don't have a mask, put on a scarf and all kinds of unbelievable things. But just like, and I worked with these healthcare organizations, and so I had access to the policies that were coming out from the state and from the government to some extent, more from the state and the CDC, in what the policies were. Organizations, emergency food organizations like City Harvest, all of a sudden had booming demands because, people couldn't, originally people can buy food because they don't have the finances to do it. They don't have access because of the lack of money. But now there were a whole bunch of people who couldn't get food because they didn't dare to leave the house. And many of the agencies in the city that were staffed by volunteers shut down. Were you working at that time still, Susan, at City Harvest? I can't remember. In the beginning of the pandemic?
Up until August.
Yeah.
Here.
It was crazy time, right? right? It was crazy time. So City Harvest also has truck drivers. They're unionized, and people work in a warehouse to put the food together that's going to be shipped out. And they needed to keep working because we needed to get the food out, and we need to package it differently. So, and they were as fearful as anybody else. So what we did very quickly, yeah, and by the way, the office workers went home quickly. They worked from home. And some of them did other work because they were, let's say, community focused. They were engaged in other activities to, to get work done that needed to get done. So one of the first early things we did, and it evolved over time, for anybody who was, let's say, client facing, right? So they need to go out into the city. We gave them additional sick days very quickly, because if people had symptoms, right? And these symptoms not because it gets diagnosed, because symptoms because you have some symptoms. You couldn't get a doctor to diagnose you. You just have to kind of guess whether you had COVID or not because of temperature. We gave them a substantial increased number of sick days because we wanted them to be out sick when they thought they were sick, rather than, oh, I need to go to work because I need to earn money. So that was one strategy that we did. I thought it was very important. The second thing we did was we created a job for a person to, in essence, to help people manage COVID while they were at home, meaning we would go shopping for them. That person would either order food or go shopping for them and the like. Because now they were isolated at home. And of course, some people got COVID. Third, we, in essence, we didn't call it that way, but for the people that were, client facing, meaning they were going out in the community, we created a hardship bonus. I mean, they got extra money per month. I can't remember what it was, but it was fairly substantial. And the people who worked from home, right, they got none of this, except if they got COVID. They got the support then as well, right? And people kept going out, right? We needed them to go out, and we had a significantly higher demand of food, so there was also a lot of stress on the system because people needed more food, and then the city kicked in money, and that all helped. I mean, it sounds a little strange, but from an HR point of view, it's a very interesting time. Okay, you needed to get people to do what they were fearful of doing, for good reason, right? And so you needed to compensate for that, and you needed to put them at ease in case they would get sick, or would get COVID, I should say. So that's what we did. It helped. Very few people resigned. I don't think any one of the truck drivers and helpers or people in distribution center resigned. I think there were people in the office that just say, well, I didn't sign up for this. I want to, they went back to their family and maybe stop working, but not that many people, because people, that's the advantage of working for a not-for-profit. There is something extra in delivering a mission. You might get paid a little less than if you work for a for-profit organization, but it's not just about making money for the owners. It's about making a difference. And that is retentive for people, and the benefits are often quite good and at times better than you would get at a for-profit organization. And Delina, are you here? Did that answer your question? Or it is at least an answer?
I think she dropped off, but
Yeah, I see that. I see that. All right. What are the legal considerations that you need to consider? So there are laws, there are minimum wage laws, you need to abide to that, and that's the easy stuff. Okay. So I want to give you an example about what's important to put in place for pay equity. So most organizations have a annual review, not most, but many, I should say, an annual review with pay increases. Or they have a system where wages or salaries go up based on some kind of corporate analysis. Okay? But there's often a subjective component to it, an evaluative component, and it is often not completely based on metrics because not everything can be measured in metrics, right? Like you can do with sales, you can measure it all. Call center work, you can measure completely. Effectiveness of call center is just measured by how long it takes, how many complaints people get, and that kind of stuff. How many answers they provide in an hour or a day or a workday. But let's think for a moment an organization where that has annual merit increases, and let's say they have a fair amount of people, and they have promotions as well. To provide equity and equality in pay, you need to do the following. So you have all these department heads making proposals for promotions during promotion time, so to speak. You need to do what is called an adverse impact analysis, which not all companies do. And what it does is, A, it calculates the average increase that people got. And then it also calculates, or you need to calculate, HR does this, people over 40, people under 40. What is their average increase? Men versus women. Racial or ethnic identification, are these different groups? Are they in range of the overall average, right? That doesn't mean it has to be exactly alike, right? Let's say the average pay increase is 4%. If one group of these is 3, it needs to have an explanation. Like the African American male in this organization gets 3%. Everybody else gets on average 4. There's something wrong with that picture, right? If it would be 4 versus 3.75, that gap is not big enough. But a whole percent is a lot, right? Now, that might be because supervisors in their proposals are discriminatory or have known or unknown bias, and HR needs to correct it, right? And so when we find, differences like that, and we can't explain them, sometimes we can explain them because this group of people, whatever they are, Asian women, so to speak, they work in one particular department, and that department exceeded all the goals. That's why they're at 5%. Okay, fine. There's a reason for it. Okay. But if there's not sufficient reason for it, HR needs to adjust it. And we just, what I recommend to do is just to adjust it across the board, right? A certain group, like the African American male I talked about earlier, they have 3%. You just increase them to 3.75%. And then you make the supervisors aware is, everybody got the same template, what they could give people, right? A good performer gets this, and successful performers meeting expectations get that, and the people who needs improvement or not performing get nothing or very little. You just put too many of this group in the lower bucket, and that is not okay, right? So that is, and you do it for two reasons: for fairness and equity, and second is to prevent getting sued. Because if somebody finds that out, that you are discriminatory in your pay practices, you're not going to win that lawsuit. If it's, if it's a pattern, if it happens once, it's one thing. If it's a pattern that happens, systemically, it's an issue. And we, of course, have these issues all over the workplaces.
Actually, I just want to mention, I was able to show the students the computerized job assessment from 2018. So it sounds like that's kind of what you were talking about, being able to collect all that information electronically and being,
Yep.
and then being able to actually really look.
Yeah. It's a very important part of providing fairness and equity. And you also do it with the promotions, right? So you look at what is the race, gender, and ethnic identification distribution of all the people you promoted. If they're all white, it needs to represent, in essence, the equivalent, the distribution of the organization. That's what you compare it to, right? Not to the state or the city or whatever. It's the organization. And it needs to be comparable. So. This was, Donna, are you here? Did I answer? Okay. Well, I hope I answered. I showed another element. There are many ways to ensure. So you don't necessarily ensure equity, but you work towards being as equitable as possible. Okay, it's not a perfect thing, so to speak. Okay. How do you?
Yeah, actually,
Go ahead.
I just want to make an observation. When I first started there in 2012, most of the staff was white women. And by the time I left, it was certainly not mostly white women. Somebody was paying attention, probably you.
Well, yeah, what you want as an organization, you want to reflect from a racial or an ethnic distribution. You want to reflect the people you serve or your customer base. Okay? And of course, there are lots of people in New York City who are white and who are hungry. There are lots of them. Okay? And many of them are seniors. But there are more people that are poor and hungry who are people of color than white in New York. And so you want to create a connection between the people who deliver a service or serve clients that matches or is comparable to the people you serve, not only in the color of their skin, but also in the language they speak, right? Or primary language they speak. And I think it's a different version of fairness to account, and also it helps with the success and the acceptance of an organization. Otherwise, if you talk about not-for-profit, it stays too much in the realm of old-fashioned charity rather than solving a daily problem for people. How do you plan on who gets paid more or less, and what are the factors that lead up to the decisions? This is Joe Macklin. Certain jobs require more experience or more education and they likely will pay more. Certain jobs pay more because it's hard to find the people, right? There are few people that have the qualifications for the job, and you need to pay more to get them. Supply in general, if you have a lot of people for certain jobs in the job market, it will limit what you have to pay for them. So it's a supply and demand issue. But it's all still triggered, or the umbrella of all of this in the pay strategy point of view is about what is fair and equitable in the industry that I'm competing with and in the region, and how much can I afford? Right? When I worked for that company, the corporation I talked about earlier, I didn't get a pay increase for the last 4 years. I did a very good job, but I knew that, and I stayed for reasons, basically out of loyalty. And they gave me many opportunities. I enjoyed working there. I appreciate the supervisor most of the time. I had several of them, and I stayed. And then at a certain point, I knew the work was done. So Evan, this question from Evan: how will the pay plan be aligned with companies' financial goals and budget constraints? It always is, right? As I talked about it earlier, when you have companies with big margins, profit margins, just to name, I named organizations like Google or Apple and other tech companies, they will pay more because they have more money to pay, right? If a company is a startup, they want to limit the pay, and they will give you perhaps stock options that will pay out some money when the company hit its goals. And it always needs to be aligned with the budget. But the budget gets driven, let's say, pay increases in the budget get driven what the pay increases are expected to be in a certain years in New York, in the healthcare sector, or in not-for-profits. Okay? Let's see here.
Thank you for answering my questions.
All right. Who was speaking here? Evan?
Evan, yeah. What
Yeah.
nonprofits did you work for?
Well, healthcare is by and large a not-for-profit. They feel like a corporation, hospitals in particular, but I work for City Harvest. I work now for WISCA, which is West Side, a campaign against hunger. I work for City Meals on Wheels, which is an anti-hunger organization for seniors, all New York based. I now work for a not-for-profit, two not-for-profits I mentioned earlier. One is called Open Door Family Medical Centers, and the other one is called Family Services Westchester. So it's in the anti-hunger field primarily, and in the healthcare. And what these organizations have in common is, with the anti-hunger organizations, they seek to improve food access. And the healthcare organizations I work for, unlike hospitals, they improve healthcare access. Right? They improve healthcare access for people who have difficulty to get an appointment with a dentist because they are uninsured or they're undocumented. They just don't allow them in. So those are the not-for-profits I'm working with or have worked with. City Harvest, overall, I probably worked 11 years for them, always as a consultant. But for the people who what many of these not-for-profits have in common, and City Harvest has as well, that some people, when they join, they said, oh, this feels much more like a for-profit than a not-for-profit, the way they're being run. And that has pluses and minuses, right? Um, it's not the traditional charity. Okay, let me see here.
Also, I just got a 5-minute warning. I don't know if that means that they're going to cut us off at 5 minutes or just that that's when.
Or that people will need to go to the next meeting. So, there's a lot of questions I haven't answered yet for obvious reasons. How often do workers get bonuses? And what makes them eligible? It's a strategic approach. I mean, salespeople always get bonuses or commissions. Fundraisers tend to get bonuses in not-for-profit world, always. And people get bonuses. Bonuses get created to increase productivity, basically, in all sectors, right? And it's not just charity, it is owners or leadership put extra money on the table to get extra performance, in essence, right? Any other burning questions that you would like me to answer in the next few minutes? Otherwise, I'm going to pick some.
Christopher, do you want to put something in the chat?
I should look.
There's nothing there right now.
No. See, it's an important question that several of you asked. How do you deal with people with the same job title?
Chris is responding right now. He's typing.
Okay, good. Just wait for that. Well, let me just answer this question in the meantime before I get to Chris. So, how do you deal with people in the same position getting different pay? Okay. So, and I talked about this earlier, but it happens because people have more seniority, then they should get more pay than a newcomer in the same title, with the same title. Or people are actually measurably performing better in a job. They get a higher merit increase, for example, and a higher pay increase in a certain year to the same job title. So what happens that, let's say, entry-level jobs that are hourly paid, they might have the same pay for every single job. But as you move up in organizations, they end up having for jobs a range. And newcomers are on the low end of the range. They learn the job. Experienced people who do the job very well are in the middle of the range. And exceptional people who perform exceptionally will be on the higher end of the range. And then they should get promoted, right? Because they do the job so well. I want to answer one that's very... Christopher is typing, but nothing comes through. Christopher Oletti, he's typing, but I'm going to answer your second question. So I have a PhD. How did you keep pursuing school? Because I'm looking forward to get my bachelor's degree, and that will be it for a while. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. So I always worked when I went to school because I wanted and needed the money. And I thought it was more interesting at times. Work was more interesting than going to school. So what that meant is my education took a long time. I got my PhD when I was 38 because it took more time because I worked. So, I advise people at times, they might have an associate's degree, they might have a GED, or they might have associate's degree or a bachelor's, right? And they see around them that a higher degree will benefit them. Education is still important to get better pay, more job security, and more options where you can work. And my advice to people, and also would be to you, Christopher, is take it one course at a time. Take a break. If you're tired from getting your bachelor's, just take a break. And then get back into something you like and take one course at a time. Because I'm always impressed as a recruiter, right? As a recruiting executive. I value degrees, right? They're not necessary for all jobs. I value experience, but I also value people going bit by bit to school while they're working. That's not about the degree, it's about the willingness to learn and invest in yourself. And it's important. It's important to give yourself more choices later on, to get the job you like, to get the pay you like. It's not everything, because you also can make good money by being very good at what you do in the right organization and get promoted, right? But education helps. And whether going for an associate's degree when you have a GED, going after it is a statement that you proudly can talk about. Achieving it is another statement, and that might be a few years away. It took me 8 years to get my PhD, and it was supposed to be done in 4. So and then the interesting part is, so I have my PhD, and it helped me sometimes to get jobs or assignments. It certainly helps me to be credible with doctors who have also a lot of education. They respect the fact they have the PhD, but nobody ever has asked me what my grade point average was. So, all right. I hope I answer. Oh, I see.
Okay.
Oh, Christopher, I appreciate the insights. I'm reading it quickly here. I never thought, he asked, did I ever consider not getting a PhD? I came to this country to get a PhD. And I didn't find all the coursework and what I had to do that interesting. That's why I took all kinds of jobs. My father was a person who didn't finish things that much. So I'm somebody who really finishes things, no matter how long it takes. I stay with it. Could have done all the work I've been doing. Did I need a PhD? Not really. I already had a master's. I didn't really need a PhD. But I enjoyed it though. PhD is overrated. Unless you want to become a professor, then you need it in most places. Yeah, working full time and getting a degree is tough. It's getting a degree. Try to work 80%. Try to get paid more and seek to work 80% and go slow in the next degree. That's what I did. Right? It's a lifelong thing. All right, Susan, any completing comments?
No, I think that this has been remarkably interesting, and we'll publish the recording. And I'm going to, the homework is ask people what they heard, and what I'll do is I'll send you their comments once we get them.
It's great, and I'm happy if there's some other key questions. I'm happy to answer them in email as well. All right. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for your thoughtful questions and I appreciate them. They really made me think and reflect. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Thank you for
Yep.
your time. Have a good one.
Thank you for
You,
talking
you,
to us. Have a good day.
you too. Take care and thank you.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Dick. This is really good. I'm going to turn this off.